Capacity Building, Center for States, and Children's Bureau logos. National Reunification Month, 2017, June 8, 2017.
Good day and welcome to the National Reunification Month Innovative Practices to Promote Reunification Conference. Today's conference is being recorded. At this time, I'd like to turn the conference over to Rachel Thomas. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. As was previously mentioned, this webinar is being recorded. It's interactive and includes polling questions. If you have any technical difficulties during the presentation, please contact Shanti Bullock at the email address listed on the screen. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please send us a message through the chat box. If we are unable to address all questions, we will answer the remaining questions in a frequently asked questions handout that will be sent soon after the webinar. The PowerPoint and additional resources referenced in today's presentation will be available for download. This webinar does feature a video later on. When that time comes, if you are dialed in by phone, please unmute your computer speakers. The sound is being streamed from your computer or device. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Taffy Campaign from the Children's Bureau.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. My name is Taffy Campaign, and I'm the National Foster Care Specialist at the Children's Bureau under the Administration for Children and Families.
Information on National Foster Care Month is available at https://www.childwelfare.gov/foster care month.
I'd like to welcome all of you to our webinar in support of National Reunification Month, titled Innovative Practices to Promote Reunification. The Children's Bureau, along with our technical assistance partners at the Capacity Building Center for States, are pleased to take this opportunity to promote information sharing on best practices supporting healthy and lasting reunification. As you're aware, reunification is the primary goal in the majority of cases where children enter foster care. It's critical to a stable and lasting reunification that systems develop strong processes and services that support this goal and provide the necessary training and resources to staff to address the issues that have affected the family in earnest and to reunify the family as soon as possible. We certainly realize that this is a difficult and intricate endeavor many times, as there are often multiple compounding issues to be addressed, which require a multidisciplinary approach to building the family's own capacity to addressing and mitigating the issues. To that end, we have a wonderful group of presenters from two child welfare agencies who have adopted a set of principles that guide reunification work holistically and really engage the caregivers as well as important team members in doing key strategies to bring the family to reunification. With the agency staff, we also have the great opportunity today to hear directly from parents and caregivers who benefited from these interventions, and I want to particularly thank them for their insight and their time. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jennifer Marchelli to talk about the webinar today.
Jennifer is a Program Area Manager at the Center for States, Foster Care Focus Area.
Thank you so much, Taffy, and good morning and good afternoon to everybody on this call today. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Jennifer Marchelli. I'm the Program Area Manager for Foster Care and Reunification for the Capacity Building Center for States. And I just quickly going to go over our agenda for today. I will briefly introduce all of the folks you're going to hear from today. We're going to see a video about what the Quality Parenting Initiative is. And then we will go into hearing from Washoe County, Nevada on their Fostering Relationships Through Visitation program. And then we'll hear from Louisiana on their Parent Partner program and the Extra Mile Family Resource Center. And then we'll have time for question and answer at the end. So feel free as the presentation is going on to enter questions in the chat box. And we'll keep track of those and we'll ask those of the presenters at the end of the conference. So you just heard from Taffy Campaign and myself. On the call also is Joan Morris, our Program Area Advisor, and the State Foster Care Director's Constituency Group Lead. From Washoe County, Nevada, you'll hear from Alice Ledesma, who works for the Department of Social Services there. And then you'll hear from Gloria Torma and Diana Pooley, who are parents and caregivers, as Taffy mentioned. And then from Louisiana, we'll hear from Melissa Thompson from the Louisiana Department of Children and Families, Evangeline Bordeaux, the Extra Mile Family Resource Center, Leslie Calloway, who's also from the Louisiana Department of Children and Families.
Leslie is with the Extra Mile Family Resource Center.
And then Barbara Calais and Tiffany Carroll, who are caregivers and parents working in Louisiana. Next, I'm going to briefly go over our learning objectives for today's webinar. We intend to increase awareness of quality parenting strategies that increase placement stability. Also, participants will be able to identify best practices to support innovation in reunification program development, increase knowledge of practices to promote positive interaction, increase awareness of interventions that support reunification through those partnerships, also to increase awareness of products and resources to support those efforts. And then, as Taffy mentioned, a big highlight for today is hear from caregivers and parents who will highlight and celebrate their roles and their experience as those valuable partners in reunification efforts. So next, just moving into what is the Quality Parenting Initiative, we're going to do a polling question. So if we can move into the polling question. When it comes up on the screen, please answer the question, which is, how familiar are you with the Quality Parenting Initiative?
Poll shows that about 71% have not heard of it, about 17% are somewhat familiar, and about 12% know it very well.
So it looks like a lot of folks haven't heard of it, so we're going to show a quick video that is going to give some information on the quality parenting strategies.
Title of video is Bringing Everyone to the Table.
The video was created for a specific program in Clark County, Nevada, but we just wanted to show it here because it really emphasizes the creation of partnerships that can happen through the efforts that our two jurisdictions are going to talk about today. So if we can move to the video, as Rachel said in the beginning, make sure your audio speakers on your Adobe platform are turned to green. It's up in the top left-hand corner.
Speaking next is a representative of the Quality Parenting Initiative, or QPI. QPI logo is shown on screen.
I think what QPI can do is bring everyone to the table and let them get to know that we all share a common goal. So even if as a foster parent that wasn't your initial plan for being a foster parent, when you really get to know why kids do better in their family and who is working towards it and how that can happen safely and in partnership, then everyone sort of can work together for the same goal. It's when we're not speaking to each other that we have the problems that we may have. And so I think QPI bringing all the different components of who's on the child's team in the same room is what allows that sort of reunification partnership message to come home. The more we get to know each other, understand what roles we bring and how we can work together for kids, the more people are working together. So it's not just saying partnership, it's being in partnership with all the community partners, with the DFS workers, and with foster, adoptive, and kinship families and birth parents that brings it all home for people. So I've seen that aha moment where you're sitting at the table and you realize, oh, okay, we all have the same goal. We might have had different ways of getting there, but now we're working towards sort of a common goal. And so for me, seeing the partnership and what's come out of the work groups has been huge. That partnership agreement that's come out is a really, really big piece for kinship and foster parents. It's huge to sort of set, this is how we're going to work together for the child. So it really brings everyone back to, this is not about anybody other than what can we do for the child.
The Quality Parenting Initiative partnership starts with you. Illustration of interlocking gears. Gear on left is labeled Washoe County, Nevada, Human Services. The one on the right is labeled Extra Mile Family Resource Center, Lafayette, Louisiana.
Okay, so next we are going to move into Washoe County, Nevada. And I'm going to turn it over to Alice Ledesma, and then when they're done, we'll hear from the Extra Mile Family Resource Center in Louisiana. Alice?
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. We're going to talk about today our visitation practice, fostering relationships through visitation, and it is based on a QPI practice that we learned. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that and give you some foundation. It is based on some research that we participated in called ABC. It was the ABCV, which was a practice and a research project, which stands for Attachment and BioBehavioral Catchup. It's a theory that is based on coaching parents to follow the child's lead. It was a very specific project that was based on children ages 6 months to 6 years. And it was, the nuts and bolts of it was that the visitation was based in a mentor working with biological parents and foster parents to coach them during visits to specifically follow the child's lead and understand the concepts of trying to lessen anxiety during the visits and actually foster some relationship while learning about the child's needs, both the caregivers, both the foster parents and the birth parents, learning about the child's needs, and in the same time kind of learning about each other and fostering a relationship together. The foster parent remained in the room during the entire visit and encouraged that follow the lead practice and behavior that was exhibited by the biological parent and that teaching moment. So through that, it was a pretty specific progress and program that we documented and looked at outcomes, and we found some pretty successful things that happened during visitation, meaning reunification rates. We went from supervised to unsupervised very quickly, and the placement stability, because of that relationship development between the caregivers, was very high. So what had happened was that we took those theories with ABCV and we generalized them to our visitation practice. The next slide, please. So what we did in learning about that foundational practice through ABCV, we use that to help define our visitation. And what we really did was we took that and we changed our philosophical approach to defining visitation.
An official or formal visit is defined as a parent's right to spend time with their children in the custody of a former spouse or another family.
And what we had to do was change the way that we look at visitation at all. And we felt that visitation in a formal sense should go from that a parent is seeing, engaging, enjoying time with the child, and while it is, a lot of documentation, but it's not something that should be used against parents or documentation about parenting practices, that it is not a way to make a decision about what is happening in the case plan, that it is a evaluative situation for the case plan or even a decision making. We had to make a shift in our practice that visitation is just what it is, and it's really about enjoying time. And we moved from the point of view that visitation is just what it is. It's really nothing but spending time and getting to enjoy the situation. So we have a couple of questions here that you might be able to answer, and some of the challenges that we had, and you might put down What are your common challenges that you have either as parents or caregivers in visitation sessions? And some of those things that we struggled with might be common to you. And what strategies do you have in your agency to address those challenges? And I think that you'll find that they're common. But if you can put down what are your most common challenges that you find in visitation, go ahead and you can just type those in there. I see that people have had some challenges in visitation. And those are challenges that certainly are common. How often supervised visits versus not, having appropriate space for visits to occur, foster parents not wanting to build relationships with bio parents, they're not long enough, frequent enough. Those are all bio parents angry or resentful of foster parents.
Challenges also include need to provide feedback to parents on appropriate boundaries for behavior, parents not having a plan for the visit, activities for children to do with the parents. Bio parents feel that they are being judged. The children become more attached to caregivers or foster parents and do not want to visit with their biological families. The children don't respect them as much as they respect their foster parents. The parent can't parent their own children with the foster parent being present. Following through on things that have been told to the children. Visit rescheduled without notice to foster parents. Lack of natural environments. Office. For visits. Parents uncomfortable being watched during visits. Foster parents not sure how to step in without offending birth parents. Birth family providing inappropriate items. Soda, energy drinks. Staff observing parents spending the visit on the cell phone rather than engaging with the children.
Those are all challenges that we certainly were looking at, and frankly, why we really quickly agreed to participate in the rigorous study with ABC. And what we found with our visitation practice was that it was really based on and addressed with this relationship development. And when we felt like we could change our perspective on what visits were for, how they were handled, and what value we gave them, some of these challenges became less. And when we changed our judgment about some of these things, we were able to strategize. The strategies that people have telling families that foster care isn't just child care, it's family care, that is a premise that's an excellent strategy. We use the term co-parenting and giving people permission to develop that relationship to co-parent children. It helps both caregivers and it helps the children so that there's kind of an understanding, lessening of anxiety about loyalty issues. Using community spaces when possible for visits. That's a great idea. We're in the process of building a visitation center that is foundationally supportive of co-parenting. Icebreaker meetings with our visitation practice and co-parenting. We felt that we saw that we didn't need to have as many formalized icebreaker meetings because the foster parent and the natural parent was already kind of foundationally having these type of icebreaker meetings on their own. They were, during the first visit, they were starting to establish that communication, that exchange of information, setting up ideas for activities on their own, figuring out strategies where they could visit, things like that. So those are all fantastic strategies to try to combat some of these challenges, but these are all challenges that we did and still do struggle with, but this change in our idea gave us a different perspective on those. So those are fantastic.
Strategies agencies use to address these challenges also include caregivers and foster parents place children in daycare and other activities to get them to be okay with being away from them, requesting that cell phones be put away during the visit, asking parents to bring games the children enjoy, outlining standards and expectations prior to visitation services and remaining consistent with expectations. Implementation of early childhood courts following the example of safe baby court teams, finding creative other ways for parents to visit outside of the scheduled time, holding visits at public parks, borrowing other agencies' parent-child visitation areas, visit in parents' home when appropriate.
So all of those things that we talked about, the challenges, led us to take our experience with ABC and talk about enhanced visitation, or this fostering relationships that QPI supports. And this visitation goes poorly often because of those things that everybody talked about. Is the child is uncomfortable with the situation, there's anxiety, birth family members, relatives, extended family may expect this intimacy too quickly. They have this expectation that kids will, after a separation, after this trauma of whatever has happened, is that, the kids will kind of bounce back quickly, and, the birth parent may feel rejected by their child. They've missed their child, however, long it's been. Either it's the next day or 2 days when the visit is arranged, and birth parents may feel threatened by this relationship that the child has with the foster family or the relative caregiver, and there's loyalty issues by everybody involved. And additionally, birth parents may not have developed skill for interacting appropriately with their child, which they don't know how to visit. It's an odd and uncomfortable and unnatural setting and structure, and those are the things that we had to identify and understand and try to plan for. So these are the reasons that we took our experience and wanted to develop them and apply them across all of our visitation for all age groups, for all settings, for all situations, which led us to try to put them in place every time we had a visit. The potential outcomes that we have and that we're seeing by this, the study that we participated in, I talked about those increased outcomes that we saw that, but fostering relationships have seen is that the birth family will, feel a stronger relationship with the caregiver, the foster parent or the relative caregivers, the kin caregivers, and feel more supported by them. This relationship development will lead to more pleasant interactions with the child. They won't feel, the birth parent won't necessarily, hopefully, feel rejected or have kind of inappropriate or false objections or false ideas of what will happen in visits, and can have a more realistic expectation of what will happen in visits. This is part of the coaching process that we have with, we have paraprofessionals that will coach foster parents and bio parents about what will happen in a visit before that visit starts, and then use the moments in a visit to say, this may have happened because of this, or you can expect this, and eventually foster parents learn to do this. Is a kind of teaching process with the follow the lead training. So there's less disappointment and less anxiety for children in that. Both the foster parent and the birth parent learn to follow the child's lead, and they learn to be anticipatory of what's going on.
And through all of this training and learning and expectation, foster parents and birth parents tend to develop a more positive relationship based on this parenting, just natural parenting of the child in common. So it's this kind of mutual learning, mutual relationship development. The outcomes, the expectations of these things, which we have seen and which are the goals of this practice, is the comfort level. Birth parents relying more on foster parents as opposed to caseworkers, agency staff, the mentors, the coaches, the paraprofessional staff. Birth parents and foster parents, caregivers relying on each other to support and provide direct information regarding the child. They're co-parenting the children, and agency staff benefit from the co-parents making arrangements for children. They're scheduling information that needs to go back and forth. They're taking care of visits. They're managing that aspect of the case, which is more reliable. It takes out the middleman type of thing, and birth parents and foster parents can make supportive and positive decisions for the child. In turn, the child tends to feel more comfortable because both of their care providers are either in the room at the visit, or if they've decided that they move to off-site or they change the supervision, they don't have those loyalty issues that are going on, and the anxiety level is lessened. Visits just simply go better for everyone, and they, as I mentioned before, they go from supervised to unsupervised to off-site sooner. And our evaluation of placement stability was increased. Reunification simply happened sooner. And so you can see that those byproducts of the environment is calmer. Birth parents feel a closer connection to kids, and the visits in general are a more positive situation. The stark differences between that, as I mentioned before, is that we had to make a philosophical, a cultural, or a value shift in our visitation practice, which was an agency shift. It was a stakeholder shift. It had to be with caregivers. It had to be with staff, management, and that our visitation practices, we had to, really take a close look and evaluate those things. Previously, visitation was not always timely, and some of the things that people mentioned, the challenges was that it wasn't frequent enough, it was not consistently scheduled. Parents had expectations on how children would react. We had expectations of parents about that, they weren't prepared for the visit, their timeliness. It was more of a punitive situation. It was rigid. If their child did not respond the way that they expected, they had values about what that meant to them, and we didn't particularly, may have not provided them explanation about what that might have been from a child development standpoint or a trauma standpoint. And so we were not participating from a level that was, case planning or trauma informed, and we had to reevaluate how we wanted to participate in that. These are some more points that we used. One of the things that was particularly a shift for us was that visitation was used as a measurement tool towards success of reunification and evidence of parenting skills. Birth parents often feel that that is negative, and I think that that is a consistency in a lot of child welfare agencies, is that it was an unnatural setting, that you're in a small room and somebody's observing you and taking notes, and that is just odd. Children have, negative reactions to that and their emplacement, and that was something that was pretty standard, and that we felt like we had to reevaluate based on our experience with what we were learning. Children also have, lots of reactions to their placement and their caregiver, and they're in a different situation, and so they can bond quickly with foster parents, with their new caregiver, and that's confusing to everybody involved. And we had to acknowledge that and try to help people work through that. And visitation previously was more stressful to everybody than rather just what it is really meant for. So this kind of conflicted feelings for everybody we had to address about attachment and making a more positive situation. So the opposite, or even just the corollary of fostering relationships, is that talked about this paraprofessional staff coaching birth parents and foster parents to be in the visit and being more realistic of expectation about a child's reaction, coaching them through kind of each visit, especially in the very beginning, from the very first visit. This mentor coaches both the birth parent and the foster parent to follow the child's lead, to take lead from the child about what would be an appropriate expectation, to not force the child to do too much too soon, especially in sibling visits, different age groups. The mentor discusses giving the child time to come to the birth parent, give them affection rather than the birth parent forcing that interaction, those types of expectations. Birth parent is given the opportunity to observe the interaction with the child and the foster parent while being coached with those types of things to help alleviate concerns about them, and the encouragement is to build a trusting and positive relationship and try to work through some of those adversarial or concerning situations that birth parents can feel about being replaced, or having some doubts in their abilities to be the parents, and they're giving confidence and given some encouragement about their role as well, and given explanation about co-parenting.
Also, foster parent can sit in the room with the birth parent, giving positive feedback on following the child's lead.
The outcomes of those things, and we talked about some of those things, that the birth parent feels as supported as the foster parent and supported by the foster parent, and the child feels more comfortable in that, and that this paraprofessional on our staff is kind of a neutral person and can be observing and kind of intercede if there's questions or things go, awry, and keep things back on track. And this paraprofessional also helps them with their case and offers wraparound services. So there's kind of this triad of people trying to help make people be successful with the reunification of their family. So they engage in this. We find that visitation is a really important part of that, but that there's a whole plan to try to get families back together, and that the foster parent or the caregiver is a really important part of that.
Another positive outcome is that the birth parent enjoys visitation with the child and is more engaged in visitation and has greater desire to work on the case plan and seek success.
So with the foundation of that, and lots of talking, I appreciate your patience, the real people that can speak to this are caregivers and birth families, and Washoe County is very fortunate to have very engaged caregivers, and we try very much to include birth families and caregivers, and we have seen some amazing success with this visitation. So I'm really fortunate to have lots of choices of people that are willing to talk about their experiences. I have with me Gloria Torma, who is an amazing person who's an adoptive and foster parent and works tirelessly with our faith-based initiatives and can speak on a whole bunch of perspectives about our visitation program and its successes and challenges. Diana Pooley is a biological parent who has participated and has quite a few experiences and has just recently had her children returned to her and unfortunately was unable to actually make it today, but she sends her apologies, but I believe that Gloria is able to give us quite a bit of perspective. So I turn it over to Gloria Torma.
Thank you, Alice, and thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to share a little bit today. I couldn't possibly add on to any of the explanation that Alice already gave for what our program is, but what I can share with you is a little bit of the personal experience, having started foster care in the previous model and now being in the model for visitation we use now. I've personally found it to be really great. We spend a lot of time in training talking about the foster parent's role in the restoration of the family, but we don't always enter into our first placement and our visits with the right tools and skill set to know how to do that. And this ABCV model has really helped with that because we are able to receive the training on how to anticipate some of those different feelings that come up from the biological families, how to redirect those interactions, and most importantly, how to make the kiddos that are in our care feel comfortable and have smooth transitions into the visit and after the visit, which most of you know that's a pretty emotional time, especially for the little guys after a visit. So with that, the tools have empowered us to be able to work closer with the biological parents of our children, which has been great. It expedites reunification for sure, and in those events where reunification isn't possible, it still made that time that the child had with their parents and the visits better. The last parent I worked with, we had a great relationship due to this model and has been reunified now for about 4 months and doing really well. And she had children in care prior to the child that I had, and she made reference to the difference all the time in the amount of interaction that we were allowed to have. Of course, clearing with the social worker how much interaction was okay. But then within those parameters, being able to interact and support her to be able to support her child. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. If Diana was here, I think she could speak to that obviously so much better than I could. But there's a lot of benefits for our biological parents in using this model and getting another support. When our parents are working their reunification plans, they can't have too many supports, and why not the people who have their child? I think it's beneficial for us as foster parents as well because in having that open relationship, I feel like we reduce the potential for allegations or misunderstandings when children are sick or visits have to be missed or any number of things go on because there's enough of a relationship there that we don't need agency mediation, that we can say to a parent at a visit, Timmy fell down and he hit his head and that's what that mark is, or hey, Timmy's struggling with math in school, and to be able to have those conversations as co-parents. So all of those things are ultimately most beneficial to the child, and then being able to see the difference in the parents as time goes on. That parent in the first visit is very standoffish and very closed and somewhat unresponsive, and to see as the time goes on and they're working their plan and they're getting their training and they're building their skill set to be able to actually observe the difference between that parent who presents as disengaged to the parent who suddenly is giving hugs and kisses and very appropriate with the child, and seeing the child respond to that in kind. So it's really, there are no negatives to the model. Of course, it is child welfare, and it is not always perfect, and there are hiccups. Everyone has to handle those hiccups situationally with their workers, but I do feel like the potential for conflict is lessened with this model. And when conflict does arise, we just take each situation as it comes. But the model provides a really friendly, safe foundation to avoid that as much as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Gloria. I think that's perfect. So with that, we will certainly answer questions, but I would like to turn it over to Melissa Thompson with Louisiana, and we will hear her presentation.
Alice Ledesma's contact information at the Washoe County Department of Human Services is aledesma@washoecounty.us.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Melissa Thompson. I'm an area director with the Lafayette Region Department of Children and Family Services in Louisiana. And I have several presenters with me today who have been excellent in quality parenting work that we have initiated in our region and in Louisiana. So I will have them introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Leslie Calloway. I'm a foster care supervisor with the Department of Children and Family Services.
Barbara Carley, a foster parent, and a partner, too, of the foster parent.
Tiffany Carroll, parent mentor with the Extra Mile Family Resource Center.
And my name is Evangeline Boudreau. I'm the program director for the Extra Mile Family Resource Center. I want to start off and just say thank you guys so much for inviting us to be a part of this WebEx. We're excited to be here. We're excited about the work that we're doing here in Louisiana. I'll just give a really brief description of what we're going to do. There are 5 of us presenting. There are several of us working with the Extra Mile, and also 2 people working with the Department for Children and Family Services in Louisiana, and we're going to kind of bounce back and forth. So I guess we can just say who we're with when we get to everyone. So again, I am with the Extra Mile, and we are an agency that contracts with DCFS to provide services historically to, or at least for the last 10, 15 years, to birth parents and their children, but long ago and now also to foster parents. So I'll be talking about some of the work that we have done and some of the work that we're doing now. I wanted to start off, we're going to talk a little bit about our Parent Partner Program. We've done this for a while. We've been doing this since before we introduced QPI here in our state, but we think that it kind of paved the way for us to do some of the work that we're doing with QPI, so we thought it would be good to talk about it a little bit here. I know that lots of states have programs that are probably similar in nature, but just so that everyone has some language, a parent partner is someone who has been involved in child welfare. They have had their children removed due to child abuse and neglect, have worked their case plan successfully, were reunified, and now serve as mentors to parents who are currently in this system. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thanks. So just a little bit of background about our program. We started this in 2011. We had some help from some national folks. We did lots of focus groups, lots of town hall meetings, lots of meetings between the stakeholders and the various levels of DCFS staff and our courts and birth parents and foster parents, and really tried to get everyone to the table. I think the biggest thing that we wanted to talk about and wanted to address was to make sure that we knew there were going to be stigmas on everyone's side, that birth parents would have feelings about DCFS workers, and DCFS workers might have feelings about birth parents and stakeholders and courts and all of that. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to come together and really talk together about what we were aiming to do and kind of have a level playing field. And we were able to do that. I think that we we had a lot of input from everyone. Our courts were very helpful. They were very supportive. DCFS at all levels. We had support from the right people in the right places. So our local staff and our supervisors in our regional area promoted and supported what we were doing. Were able to get us referrals and parents, and worked with us to establish exactly what job duties and all of the nuts and bolts would look like. And at the state level, I think that our state folks just really wanted this and wanted to have parent representation and wanted to hear what parents' experiences had been and what we could do better. So we were able to get people there with money and resources and all that good stuff. Next slide. Thanks. So we have a two-pronged approach with our program. The first is our parent partners work with parents who are involved currently on an individual level. So they mentor parents who are currently involved. The other one, the other prong is that we want to make sure that birth parents are included in the larger system work. And so the parent partners that we have do a lot of work with state and regional folks, sit on committees, and make sure that kind of the collective parents' voice is brought when policies are being discussed or practices are being discussed and changed and all of that kind of stuff. Next slide. So the program today, we have 2 or 3 parent partners, kind of depending on where we are. They are full staff of the extra mile and all everything that it means to be a staff person. On the individual level, some of the things that we think have been helpful to, or one of the things that we think has been helpful in reunification is that there's not a time frame on services. Families can be kept open as long as necessary. We often see families stay open with the program for several months after reunification has occurred to make sure that there is some support there. Average caseloads tend to be about 15, but go up and down. At the systems level, they've been able to bring that parent voice to various places. They served on different committees. They've presented at our big state child welfare conference that we have here, at the social workers conference. We had someone that was invited to speak at the National Association for Counsel for Children conference. We've had one of our parent partners invited to speak to policymakers and senators in Washington, D.C. about their experiences. They have really been able to talk about their experiences and what they've been, and I think help shape some practices. They also attend both DCFS new worker trainings and foster parent trainings. At the DCF trainings, they started going to them just to get the information. But we found both at those and at the foster parent trainings that our parent partners really do give people, help people to know that this is what a parent looks like on the other side of things, and that people really can change, and that the birth parent that you see today can be a very, very different birth parent tomorrow. And I think that's a lot of what they've been really good at doing is giving everyone hope, including the birth parents that they're currently working with and staff that work so closely with them. They're also working with DCFS in Louisiana to develop a substance abuse training curriculum that is specific to DCFS staff. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so these are some of our outcomes. So these are going to be similar to what other states have seen. We have a small sample size of actual data, but what we've seen so far indicates a decreased rate of repeat maltreatment. And the observed benefits, this is a few, but I think overall we've seen an increase in system engagement. And this includes engaging with all partners. I think probably most importantly, DCFS staff and foster parents. We've also seen increased visitation where visitation wasn't consistent, or there are lots of missed, or where there were maybe weren't happening as often as they were supposed to. Parent partners have been really good at advocating for birth parents and kind of getting those back on track. Getting visitations in the home where they're appropriate. like Alice was talking earlier, visits can be a really stressful time for birth parents, for children, and sometimes just moving the location can be helpful in helping us be a little bit less stressful. More positive relationships with the birth parents and the various people they come into contact with. And some of those cases that just seemed stuck, that just weren't going anywhere, we were able to see those move forward and ultimately result in reunification. We've also seen, and this isn't up here, but we've seen families after reunification call when they get into a little bit of trouble and are, I think, able to use the parent partners as a safety net to prevent further involvement. Next slide. Okay. And now I'll talk a little bit about the a project that we began working on since the rollout of QPI. So last August 2016, we applied along with DCFS to complement some of the QPI efforts that were going along here to receive a grant to really look at the relationship between birth parents and foster parents.
The grant is called Project Launch, Linking Actions for Unmet Needs in Children's Health.
So we have found that that's an area that we really wanted to focus on, and some of that was a result, I think, of having our parent partners involved in our initial QPI talks. And we saw a divide between the birth parents and foster parents and thought that was an area that we needed to do some work on. So the grant that we applied for and were awarded offered three components to these family units, which were comprised of a foster parent, the birth parents, and the children that they share. And we were able to offer some mentoring components to each one of both the foster and birth parent around why a relationship is so important, what it means for them to have a relationship and what it means to the child. There was also a component written in to have a meeting with them together to talk about, again, why it's important and then how to do that. What works for your particular or your specific family? What are you comfortable with? What can you do? So to make a contact plan or a continued contact plan to what that might look like after the meeting. And finally, we would conclude the little series with an art or music project, depending on what the child liked, that would have all three, the child and then both sets of caregivers together. And just as a chance to have them spend some quality time together, give it some structure, but have them spend some time together outside of all of the baggage that comes along with the DCFS system. So we have begun work on that. It has, I think, opened some doors for us and given us some insight into some more of the things that we'd like to do. And with that, I'll turn it over to Melissa to talk about some of the other QPI efforts that have gone on here in Louisiana.
So when we started with quality parenting in Louisiana, from the department standpoint, we already had discussed, Evangeline and I, working with the Extra Mile, the importance of improving the relationships between the foster and birth parents. We knew that there had been some contentious relationships between birth parents and foster parents in our region, and we wanted to diminish the contentious relationships and improve the relationship between the foster and birth parents. So we had talked, and we were very excited about the Project Launch Grant. And when Carol Schofer came along and started working with us with quality parenting, and she did the focus groups and the kickoff sessions, and we started discussing some of the committees that would be formed and some of the work we would be doing. When she mentioned the icebreakers, and we decided that to be one of the projects we would be embarking upon, we were really excited, Evangeline and I, because we had begun already the work around the Project Launch Grant, and it was totally aligned with the icebreakers that we would be working on through the Quality Parenting Initiative. So we knew it was important we'd be building communication. The building communication project definitely aligned closely with the icebreakers. And the icebreakers would be the responsibility of our child welfare staff. It would set the groundwork for the building communication project through the project launch grant. And we wanted to ensure that the progression from the icebreaker meetings to the project launch grant would be seamless. So we did develop a referral form or referral process to actually ensure that once we completed the icebreakers, some of those cases would be referred over to the project launch grant. From the department side, we knew it was important to find champions, people within our region who were excited and enthusiastic about quality parenting, about the icebreakers, about improving communication in general between foster and birth parents. So we were able to, find those champions who were willing to be lead on different committees. And it was important for us to, follow up with that and get the people involved on the committees. We knew that we needed input from birth and foster parents on the committees, and we did get birth parents and foster parents who were really enthusiastic and interested in working with us on improving outcomes for foster children and working on building those relationships and providing the input that we needed to ensure that we were getting the information and touching on what was important to the people who this would be, directly impacting. From the child welfare standpoint, we had to secure buy-in from staff. And in order to secure the buy-in, we had to share the benefits of this project with staff. So talking to staff about this being a team approach to reunification, that when foster parents support the work that the birth parents are doing and they have an improved relationship, that our reunification efforts, are easier, and hopefully we can get to reunification quicker. Building that relationship between the foster parents and the birth parents, is extremely important, and we knew that we had work to do around that area. Less involvement with department staff around scheduling visits, around, phone contacts, and around other forms of communication like Facebook and texting. And the foster parents and the birth parents, through the icebreaker work and the building communication project, could schedule those activities without involvement of DCFS. The next slide, please. And now Leslie will discuss some of the strategies that we utilize.
Okay. So Project Launch's focus is to ensure foster parents have the information and support for working with parents. Also, that foster parents clearly identify their role as being supportive of the reunification process, as well as building trusting relationships between the parent and caregiver, which is really important to the success. We also incorporate natural opportunities when possible for interaction between the birth and foster parents. We encourage as much contact between them, even as much as phone calls, in-person meetings to develop more on the engagement. And we encourage more opportunities for the parents to be involved in regular day-to-day activities, school activities, sports, extracurricular activities, anything that would just make a normal relationship for parents, or shared parenting. It is DCFS's responsibility to share with foster parents the parameters and types of acceptable activities to empower foster parents and normalize relationships with birth families, focusing just that safety of a child is never compromised. Project Launch was a natural transition to develop foster parent mentors, and through the QPI committee, the formulation of foster parent mentors continued to evolve. Important parties that were put together to on this committee to get input were the birth parents, our home development unit, which recruits our foster parents, the foster parents, the foster care staff, and the resource center were all essential in the success. And I'm going to turn this over to Melissa.
Of course, any project comes with challenges, and in Louisiana, we definitely had some challenges along the way. In Louisiana, we are known for hurricanes, and now, unfortunately, also known for some major flooding events, and we had a major flooding event in August of 2016 in Louisiana, and it delayed the project. The workers were deployed to work disaster relief, emergency preparedness, and as everyone in Louisiana knows, when emergency preparedness happens, all hands are on deck. So we had a lot of staff who were working disaster relief during that period of time. We did plan the rollout in conjunction with QPI in December 1st of 2016. And fortunately for Vermilion Parish and for our for Lafayette region, there were no removals in Vermilion Parish in the month of December. Unfortunately for the icebreaker meetings and for the Project Launch Grant, there were no removals in December of 2016. So that was another a challenge that we had, and so we had to do things a little bit differently. And instead of having Vermilion be the pilot site, we had to move and get Lafayette involved, and Leslie Calloway and her staff were really instrumental in starting the icebreaker meetings in Lafayette Parish and getting some families referred to the Project Launch Grant. We realized how much foster parents need support, especially around working with birth parents. So that became something that was a challenge for us because we found out that, we had foster parents who were resistant to working with birth parents, and we had to find a way to actually handle that. And the foster parent will, speak more to you about what she did to accomplish that. And then we found out that we had birth parents who were also resistant to working with foster parents. And we have the birth parent here who will talk about that challenge and how she's worked and developed some strategies around working with birth parents. So I will turn this over to Evangeline again.
Okay, this is Evangeline again. So I guess probably the biggest thing for us that came out of the rollout of QPI and really coming together as a team and then applying for this grant that enabled us to do this project where we were looking at bringing birth and foster families together, we realized just how badly foster parents needed support and how much we needed to assist in supporting the development of the relationship between birth and foster parents. The way that we currently, or the way that things have been done, I'm always reminded that someone at the end of the day will likely lose out on a child, and it really winds up being almost a competition for a child sometimes, and that's not the way that it needs to be. And we have so many models of a different way to do that. We have some absolutely wonderful foster parents who have really embraced working with birth parents, who have a lot of skills around working with birth parents, and we've been able to tap into some of that and have been talking with DCFS and with all the folks at the table in developing this foster parent mentoring role. So it started as a real simple conversation, but we asked for funding for a position, and we're granted it from our state. So we're excited to begin developing that role. So some of the things that we've already done in looking at how foster parents can mentor, really both other foster parents as well as birth parents. This slide talks about some of the things that we've already been doing. So at our agency, the Extra Mile has begun incorporating foster parents into visit coaching services. Visit coaching is a model that we provide. It involves a staff person coaching a birth parent during a visit. It looks a lot at bonding and attachment and developing a healthy and beneficial relationship between the two. And we have begun incorporating many more foster parents, that kind of that safe base and that safe person for a child, especially for very, very young children, when we see that there's some distress when they're separated. We have a parenting class that we provide that involves family time that also is sometimes stressful for small children when they're separated from their caregivers. And so the same thing, we've been incorporating some foster parents to help with the separation, but also to help assist in building specific skills with birth parents. And we've seen a lot of good successes with that. We've been able to send family sets that include the foster and birth parents and the children to a Disney on Ice special event. And so I think everyone had a good time with that. That was successful for our families. And we began working with DCFS on the development of this particular position. We have rolled out our grant project, which again was that series of 3 meetings that included the mentoring component for birth and foster families, included that communication meeting between the 2 sets of caregivers, and finally that music or art project that included the caregivers and the parents and the birth parents. So we want to give our parent mentor and our foster parent mentor a chance to talk about what some of their experiences have been with the work that we've been doing around our state. The next slide, please. And first, I'll turn it over to Tiffany Carroll, who is one of our parent mentors.
Hi, good afternoon. Tiffany Carroll, parent mentor with the Extra Mile. I'm also a biological parent. I'm a mother of 4 wonderful children. That includes a set of twins. As a parent mentor, life has been great, being able to help families and mentor them through navigating the DCFS system. With our project launch grant that we've been working on, I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to be helping with this. It's been an amazing time and journey through all of this. What we've accomplished, I guess, in doing these the project launch is we're seeing families between biological parents and foster parents communicate more. It's showing them what they can and can't do, letting them know it's okay to have relationships outside of what DCFS tells them that they can or can't do. We had one foster family, they thought the dad didn't care about the son due to not asking about the child or not showing up for appointments, and it was sitting back and watching them go back and forth and coming to the foster parents coming to understand that even though they were telling their worker about the appointments, that worker was not relaying the information to the biological dad, and so they just had this sour outlook towards him. And because of this project launch, it was like when they told him that, the dad looked at him and said, "I fight every day for my son, and when he comes home, y'all can still see him." And the foster parents, they were able to relax at this point because it was a very tense, moment during all this time. And because of that outcome and because of that meeting, and then when they went on to do the project was awesome. They did the little handprint project, as an art project, and now they talk every day through Facebook. When I saw the biological dad last week, he was like, everything's going great. It's doing a lot better than what it was. And another family that sticks out really was they did not know if they could do this, or they did not know if they could do that. And when we started talking about ways to bridge that gap of communication, they were able to we were able to, as a team, come up with ideas on ways to involve both of them, and it's foster parents wanting to go pick up the mom on a Saturday and go sit down and go eat, and hang out. For that particular family, the foster parent didn't have an update on where mom was at and what was going on with the case, and the mom sat there and gave at a full disclosure, told the foster parent exactly where she was at and what was going on with her. That's been the like I said, the stuff that sticks out that has been amazing. Of course, we've had our challenges. I've had birth parents just tired of fighting and they don't want nothing to do with their foster parents, or I've had, it's so foreign to them, and it's been a challenge to get them engaged, but we've been working on it, and it's been working out for the better. With anything, any new adventure, you always have your ups and downs, but I think going forward, I think it's really, really amazing. And I'm going to turn it over now to Ms. Barbara.
Thank you, Tiffany. Barbara Colley. I'm a mentor for the foster parents. In order to work or be a mentor to another foster parent, it was very important for me to get the foster parent to look at self. From a foster parent point of view, looking closer at how vulnerable we are through our journey. The emotional pain we love, we care for, and we become a mother figure to a child and have to make peace with self to let go. We are susceptible to temptation. We want the best for the child and sometimes feel that we have to be more or we have more to offer to that child. But with working with the bio parents from the beginning of the placement, we go into the journey with a broader overview of the bio parent and his or her journey. Empathy is developed early on, which makes it much easier to work with the bio family. The focus is to work together. We make the journey of the child in foster care to reunification with the biological parent as natural as possible. The goal then is that the child can feel that I can live with some caring people and mom is still close by. They all love me. The child's attitude or they can get really attached to the foster parent, but it is up to that foster parent to try to get the child to work or get closer to their own parents. There's lots of work to be done. It is a challenge, but I think together we can make it successful. One thing that a lot of the foster parents are now feeling is that there's no empathy towards them. So I know that that's one thing that needs to be addressed, and we can all look at it and still work together.
Okay, and again, this is Evangeline Boudreaux with the Extra Mile. And both Melissa and Tiffany have mentioned there have been some challenges. We saw a lot of resistance, especially early on, between both sets of caregivers towards working with the other. And so we knew, and we still know, looking at developing this position and developing and looking at the work that we're doing, that that this is an area that we really need to work on. So we want to make sure that when we're developing the position of a foster parent mentor and providing support to foster parents, that we're really thinking through what we're doing, that we're providing them something that they need in a way that's going to be most helpful. So this particular slide looks at our plans and the things that we're working on now. So the first thing that we're looking at doing is developing a steering committee that includes different units from DCFS, that includes foster parents, birth parents, to see how we can most support foster parents. And once the mentors are hired, the various job duties that we're looking at now include looking at new foster parents who are getting their first placement, and weekly phone calls, or actually several weekly phone calls for the first few weeks, just to check in and see how that placement is going. We know that brand new foster parents get incredibly busy. It can be really overwhelming. There's a lot of things going on, and they may not even have the time to reach out, and may not even have the frame of mind to formulate questions. But if someone just reaches out and says, hey, how are things going, and just has a conversation, they can probably get a lot of good support. And the same thing, when we know that a child that has some difficult behaviors is going to be placed with a foster parent, to be able to kind of be proactive in supporting that foster parent. We're looking at facilitating monthly groups between birth and foster parents and children that are enrolled in our parenting class that has family time between birth parents and foster parents. And also group or one-on-one support as needed for foster parents. Next slide, please. Thank you. One of the things that we know is a big issue for foster parents is at least acknowledging the grief and loss that comes along with being a foster parent. Again, this is the system can kind of just be full of loss, and for foster parents who are constantly having to love a child and let go of a child, we want to make sure that they know that they're appreciated, that they're needed, and do whatever we can to support them. So we're looking at some ways to support them through that, either one-on-one, if that's most beneficial, or in group settings where they can have a support group around that. And then looking at kind of thoughtfully transitioning children during reunification and also replacement, and looking at how caregivers can co-parent with each other, looking at doctor's appointments and looking at sports and church and the various things that go along with everyday life, and how caregivers can work together to include each other with those things. Respite care, if a child is reunified, if a child goes back to that birth family, often we hear that foster parents want to be connected, want to remain connected with that child, and don't want to lose that relationship. And the child doesn't want to lose that relationship with someone who's cared for them for that time in foster care. And I can't think of a single foster parent who I've talked to who has not said, I want to be available for, if a birth parent needs a babysitter or just needs someone to watch a child, or is just going through a stressful time and might need a couple of days to regroup or something like that. And also, how can foster parents be supportive of reunification? This is something that we've talked with foster parents about through our Project Launch Grant. I think for us it's been really interesting work. It's helped give foster parents just some things to think about, and some ways that they can continue to be involved. And finally, we're just looking for any opportunity to create natural interaction between parents and caregivers wherever possible. We're now going to turn over to Melissa for questions and answers.
Melissa's contact information is melissa.thompson.dcfs@la.gov. Evangeline's contact information is evangelineb@bellsouth.net.
Thank you, Evangeline, and thank you to all of the speakers from Washoe and Louisiana that talked about your programs. We have about 10 minutes for question and answer. There were a few that came through the chat box as the presentations were going. So I will ask those to the presenters, and if folks on the line have other questions, please feel free to chat those in. Alice and other folks at Washoe, one of the questions that came in for you all was, what have been some of the observations using this process with visits with teenagers?
Well, that's a challenge. But I think that I think that there's a couple of questions in there, and the visitation model is it's applied, and the expectation is across the board, and that we have worked to apply this for all age groups, and that it's certainly easier to follow a 2-year-old's lead than it is to follow a 15-year-old's lead, but that we work with foster parents and bio parents to apply those concepts and to understand developmentally where a child is and where their relationship is, and the expectation is that we will, and we will apply the fostering relationships practice model in all visitation situations. So with older kids, we will set up opportunities for the birth family and the foster parents to engage in those practices and follow the child's lead and take their cues on how they want to visit and how they want to engage, and try to foster some interest in what's going on and have that conversation. So the bottom line is that the expectation is that we will do these types of visit practice with everyone.
Great. Thank you so much, Alice. To the Louisiana folks, I think maybe Evangeline, you can probably answer this question. One question that came through was, are there issues of utilizing parent partners who by definition have a history of abuse and neglect perpetration? And has this created any problems due to not passing child abuse, neglect, and background checks, which are normally requirements for child care providers?
No, actually the requirement for the parent partner position is DCFS involvement. That's the definition of what the position is. There's a lot that went into that particular position around time since case closure with DCFS. We look for parents who have really made the changes, internalized changes, and have a lot to give back to parents. Every parent partner that we've had has seen the benefit of DCFS involvement. So that has not been an issue.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Back to you, Alice. Have you been able to engage, or have you been able to get the families, foster and birth, to engage in these visits?
Yeah, we've done training. We have done, foundational work with that, and the information that we provide to them is about the benefit and the outcomes, like Gloria talked about, that the practice is beneficial to them, to their children, to case managers, to management, to case planning. So we've done a lot of work about why it's good to make this switch to that, but also we have an expectation that people will participate. So you don't really get to opt out. You don't get to pick and choose about, well, I'll do this type of visitation here and I won't do it here. Certainly we were, we discussed about there are aberrations and there are situations where this kind of visitation, just generally, where the foster parent is supervising the visit, or a coach is not there, or maybe somebody's brand new, or a parent has particular issues, maybe extreme violence or extreme mental health untreated substance abuse issues, something like that, or extreme personality conflicts, something that we haven't been able to work through, and we have to pull back on some of those supervision issues. People are human, and it's not just so structured that there's no kind of individuality, but the engagement part, we haven't found foster parents or bio families who haven't really wanted to do it. There are some barriers. You've got 6 kids in your house and you've got 6 different visitation plans. Just logistically, we've had to afford people some help to do that, but we are still working on that. But we don't really have people that say, you know what, I'm out, I'm not going to do it, because our expectation is you will, and people find that the benefits of it are really quite positive.
Great. Thank you. And we have a couple more questions for you, Alice. Is the mentor the caregiver, foster parent, or someone else?
Initially, the coach is a paraprofessional, it's a staff person, so it's not a social worker, but it's a staff person here. And then the intent is that eventually the foster parent who knows the model will be the person in the room, will be the coach. So as you get more familiar with it, we have foster parents who are really good at it, like Gloria, and she can manage it, and she doesn't need a coach, she doesn't need a prompt, and can do that by herself. But some foster parents obviously are new, or it's a really challenging placement, so that coach is that paraprofessional staff person.
Great, thank you. And I have one more question, Alice, and I'm just going to give one more plug. We have a few more minutes. If there's any other questions, please feel free to type those in the participant chat. But the last question I have for you is, has this model of visitation had an impact on reentry rates?
I don't have firm data on reentry. I certainly have anecdotal situations where foster parents are, because of the relationship that has been developed, foster parents are and relatives are support people for, and because of that strong relationship that they've developed with bio families, they intercede. They are the people that the bio families turn to when things get stressful. We have stories and documentation of foster parents, caregivers providing child care, providing respite, getting phone calls. I know that, Gloria, you want to speak about that real briefly, about people being there for bio families and kind of helping them out in the stress of their kids being returned to them.
So like Alice said, we don't have a lot of firm data on this, but we do know that this model has provided opportunities for almost like family preservation efforts, where in establishing that relationship and becoming that support, rather than a young mom going back to using in a stressful situation, she knows that she can call a previous foster parent and say, wow, it's a hard day, baby's got a fever, baby's crying, I had to call in sick to work, my boss yelled at me, I'm just frustrated with the day, here's how I feel, and be talked through that. Or when other major life things happen, that, child care can be provided and everything is safe, just any level of support that keeps the parent on the path that they need to be on for their child to not reenter care, kind of becomes the role of the foster parent after reunification following this model. That being said, of course, if there was something going on that the child was in any kind of jeopardy, we would, of course, report that back to the agency.
Jennifer.
Great. Thank you to you both so much. All right, well, we've come to the end of our time, so I wanted to give a huge thank you to all of our presenters that were on the call today and prepared for this webinar, to to give all of this fabulous information about your guys' programs, and a special thank you to our parent and foster parents who were able to share their experience. I think it's so very helpful to hear all of that.
Jennifer's contact information is jennifer.marcelli@icf.com. Web address for the Capacity Building Center for States is https://capacity.childwelfare.gov/states. Email is capacityinfo@icf.com. Phone is 844-222-0272.
So I just wanted to put a plug in. We have an evaluation link if you all can give us feedback on this webinar. We always like to hear the feedback and work to improve our webinars.
Evaluation was a day of feature and is now closed.
So thank you all very much for coming today. Please let us know if you have any other questions that come up after this. And thank you again for attending today.